Dear students, in this second video, we shall go through some concepts related to teaching and more specifically, foundational epistemology. Okay, as a teacher, you should be able to speak about and understand basic epistemological concepts and learning theories. So, what do we understand when we refer to the term epistemology? Okay, so according to different authors, uh, there are different theories or different statements. The one I've selected on your screen, you can see is by Danahy, who goes on to say that epistemology is the study of knowledge acquisition. It involves an awareness of certain aspects of reality, and it seeks to discover what is known and how it is known. Okay, so this statement is true, and if you look at our my recommended textbook for this at the bottom of your screen, Bates 2015. He specifies or he states in his book that the way we teach in education is primarily delivered by our beliefs or consensus amongst academics, and this is true. Okay, uh, so he further goes on to actually give you an example in his book on page 40 and 41 to make us understand what is the need for epistemology. And you can go and look at this on page 40 and 41. This book is available online, it is free. And it essentially gives an example of two people having a discussion. And the one person decides that they want to write a novel based on an accident that happened to somebody else. And person number two is curious and basically wants to know that you did not actually take part in the accident. You are not the victim. You are not an observer. How then would you write your book, and from what point of view, if you do not have knowledge, first-hand knowledge of the actual incidents? And person one replies, I may not have the actual knowledge, but it is possible for myself to actually ask people who are in that situation or experience that. And person two disagrees with this and says, no, this isn't how it should be done. You should actually have taken part or been a victim of this particular accident to actually speak about it. And a quarrel ensues, and basically that conversation comes to an end. And this example basically makes us aware that the knowledge that we have in our minds and the way that we acquire it is different for every person. And this directly links back to yourself becoming a teacher. What you know and what you believe in will influence the way that you actually teach your subjects. Okay? So when we speak about epistemology, the next natural topic to be discussed after that are learning theories. And throughout some of the courses in this PGCE, you will come across these terms extensively. However, in this module, we will touch on them and give you a very cursory idea of what they actually entail, and I will try to actually present them in a way that you can relate to them or understand them better in your mind. Okay? Okay, students, so objectivism. Objectivists, where do they stand on learning theories? Objectivists believe that there exists an objective and reliable set of facts, principles, and theories that either have been discovered or will be over the course of time. That's their standpoint. And their position is linked to the belief that truth exists outside the human mind or independently of what any individual may or may not believe. Okay, so their their stance is the laws of physics are constant, although our knowledge of them may evolve as we discover the truth out there. Okay, so essentially an example of this, as you can see, there is a picture on the bottom right hand side of your screen with the planets in our solar system. and these planets have always been there. Uh, and you can observe that they have two different classifications in this picture, the one being planets on the far right and below that dwarf planets. And I recall when I was growing up and we were taught about planets, that Pluto was included in the planets. And later on, there's evolution in our knowledge, and it is now classed as a dwarf planet. So the point being is whether we classify them as planets or dwarf planets, they've always been there, whether we knew about it or we didn't know about it. Okay, so this is just a very simplistic example of what your objectivist train of thought is. Okay, cognitivism. Basically, cognitivism relies on uh, cognitive approach and cognitive psychology. And if you look at the statement on your slide, it states that it holds that if we are to understand learning, we cannot confine ourselves to observable behavior, but must also concern ourselves with the learner's ability to mentally reorganize his psychological field, okay, his inner world of concepts, memories, etc., in response to experience. So what does this mean? Okay, so according to Bates, uh, the search for rules, principles, or relationships in processing new information and the search for meaning and consistency in reconciling new information with previous knowledge are key to cognitive psychology. Okay, so that excerpt that I read for you is directly from the Bates textbook 2015. And basically, what this relies on, or what they are trying to get across, is in any learning, new knowledge and information has to reconcile with the current knowledge of a student. Okay, so an example of this would be if you were teaching a student in grade 10 and the next year they moved on to grade 11, how would the new information that you are going to teach them in grade 11 link back to grade 10, right? So the manner in which you teach them, the manner of what you are teaching them, etc. Okay, so examples of cognitive teaching methods and learning styles can be put into place or understood by an example. uh, Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so Bloom's taxonomy is an example of a cognitive approach, and you can read more about that in Bates 2015, which is specified over there. And previously, I mentioned to you objectivists. So in this instance, if you follow a cognitivism approach, you are known as a cognitivist. Okay. The next teaching or learning style that I want to speak about is constructivism. Okay, so constructivism takes on a whole new approach. And as you can see on the slide, let's read it out. Both behaviorists and some elements of cognitive theories of learning are deterministic, in the sense that the behavior and learning are believed to be rule-based and operate under predictable and constant conditions over which the individual learner has no or little control. However, constructivism or constructivists emphasize the importance of consciousness, free will, and social influences on learning. Okay, so constructivism, uh, by that definition, is pretty straightforward, and I think this definition really does spell out that the previous two learning theories are very deterministic in that they are rigid and they hold to their beliefs, and that's the only way. However, constructivism is more an amalgamation of the two and has more freedom in terms of actually learning, and it's basically understandable in the sense that learning does not simply just occur from a teacher to a student. Sometimes learning occurs via your social network, your social influences around you, the people you talk to, the things you discover on your own, whether it's via Google or reading a website or reading a book. And this view basically holds true in many instances. Okay. And the last learning method that is worth mentioning is connectivism, which is fairly new. And in connectivism, being that it is new, it's still being refined. And I would at the onset state that this learning method can be very difficult or in understanding because it is fairly new. And there are various aspects of this learning approach or learning model that aren't quite defined per se. Okay, so an example of this would be the instantiation of actually new online learning systems such as MOOCs or massive open online courses. In 2011, there are certain researchers that carried out a study using MOOCs as a connectivist approach, and there are many discrepancies in this model. Okay, so if you read the first line there, it tells you connectivism presents a model of learning that acknowledges tectonic shifts in society, where learning is no longer an internal individualistic activity. Learning, defined as actionable knowledge, can reside outside of ourselves, within an organization or a database. Okay, so what this basically means is that there is no uh, traditional learning as you would see in a classroom. Okay, it may seem confusing and it actually hasn't been refined very well. For example, if you just take what I've just said and you try to understand where does the role of a teacher or instructor play in this whole learning process, and the authors and researchers state that um, the role of the teacher or instructor is just to start up the actual learning process, and thereafter it is actually reliant on the information being passed around between nodes or participants in this instance. Okay, and as you can understand, this is some new age learning, and it hasn't been properly refined. Okay, so do not delve too deeply into it. I just thought that it may be worth learning. It is stated in the teaching in the digital age and is actually worthy of being mentioned. Okay, students, that's the conclusion for week one lesson. And if you guys have any questions with regards to the two videos that have been posted up, feel free to email me at the email that I have posted. And there is a forum set up on ECI. I know I've written Moodle forum there, but it's actually supposed to be ECI, where you can post a question or feel free to message me privately via email. Okay, thank you.